Pyramid One Radio.
Hi.
Hi.
To call and to speak to Kelly, use these numbers. Dial 605-472-5765. Then dial the access code 608060#. Then to join the session, which will be awesome. Congratulations, you are now ready. Tell everyone we expect 1,000 people listening on their phones from all over the world.
This is a Pyramid One International Network presentation. Good evening, and welcome to Conscious Speaks. Let me tell you a little about the host. Her name is Kellie J WRIGHT. You all know her. Tonight, be a part of the conversation. What it means to truly love yourself. Free of judgment, fear, ego, pride, and jealousy. She says, we learn to undo what we have accepted or taken on as part of our perception of self. We are free from negative self-talk. Start a 90-day transformation, and she will assist along your journey. Whenever two or more are in his presence is how this works. Kellie's ebook is how she walked her mind out of doubt and fear, one blog at a time for 13 weeks, into loving and acceptance of self. The first step is the hardest, and it will become a way of life. Once we know we can free our thoughts from fear, the work becomes a staple item to the goodness it provides. Life is a gift. So make sure you choose to wrap yours in a world that is created by and lived on your terms. Kellie J WRIGHT is a successful radio show host, self-love transformational guide, business owner and voice, and author at www.internaljourneys.com. Kellie is on a passion-filled mission to help individuals discover their own truth through her actualized process called the 90-Day Transformation. Now, may I introduce to you, the audience, to the entire world, to the universe, to the light. Kellie J WRIGHT.
Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today to Conscious Speaks Radio. I kind of had a little platform I was going to run through, and then I could see Vicky, but Vicky can't see me, and I can see Bob. So we have this, I'm just thinking, it reminds me, I'm just going to go off the cuff here. Welcome, Vicky, Paul. Welcome to Conscious Speaks Radio.
Hello, thank you for having me. How exciting.
It is exciting, and I thought, you know what better way to go off script than when you're off script. So
Absolutely. Winging it's the way forward.
It is the way forward. One of the things that you know about transformation work is once you learn to really seek that soul and be love, you're just, yeah, where are we? What are we doing, right?
Yeah, things don't work. They're not meant to. Whatever.
I know.
It's all
you
good.
know, you look beautiful. I can see you. It's so great to hear you
Oh, thank you.
in real time. I wanted to tell everybody out there listening to Conscious Speaks Radio that Vicky Paul is from the UK, and I believe you're in London right now, but you're from Scotland. I kind of got confused.
Yes, that's right. So originally from Scotland, and we moved down to London just about a year ago. So
okay,
great, yeah.
When I listened to your first video on Facebook, I heard your accent, and I said, that is Scottish.
Yes. And I've met many Scottish people down here who've been down here for 20, 30 years, and they still have their accent, so I will hang on.
Yes, prevail. I'm American born, third generation, Scotland on both sides. So
Cool.
my grandfather had the accent, sort of, because he was the baby. We grew up here. They came over, 5 of them, on London and Ellis Island, my Nana and my Papa from Scotland. And so we didn't, your accent, when I heard it, was just like, oh, it's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. You never notice your own accent being attractive, and I always love the American accent, but it's funny you said your grandparents were from Scotland. My papa, which is my mum's dad, so my grandfather was actually born in Boston.
Oh, wow. We're trading a little bit of frequency.
Spooky coincidence between the two of us. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's true. I like it because I think I love it. I've been looking at everything you do, and I thought it's no doubt that we connected. You know, you're an artist, a writer, an intuitive who works with individuals and groups to create transformations through soul connection. And I thought, ooh, soul reconnection. Tell me about that.
Oh gosh, right, where do you start? So really, for me, all of these conversations are personal. I don't believe there's a right and a wrong. It's my belief and my understanding of spirituality and soul and spirit and intuition. And for me, we are soul or spirit having a human experience. So we're sort of soul energies, which, as you know, is energy that never dies. And we come into various different lives. And this life, I am Vicky Paul, talking to you in 2019. And our soul, we're born into this life knowing our path, knowing what we're here to do and here to achieve. And soul reconnection for me is a process of remembering that. So it's reconnecting to our inner wisdom, our inner knowing, to assist and support us on this particular journey. So that's the kind of abbreviated version of it. So everything I do and have started to do over the last few years of sort of the intuitive work is about exploring that process for myself, because we're always on a journey, but equally to support other people in remembering who they are, because I think so much of the trouble nowadays that people experience individually and collectively is because they have sort of separated, and I use that word in inverted commas, but they don't remember their soul self. And I'm kind of keen to try and help as many people as possible to reconnect with that sort of inner knowing, that inner essence, so that they can remember who they are and what they're here to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Do you remember when you first started remembering?
Yes, it's been a kind of a long journey, as sometimes these journeys are, and with hindsight, I now, I'm aware that I was aware of spirit, and I was aware of being connected to spirit or universal energy, the source, one, whatever you like to call it, as a child. But it really all properly kicked off for me. And I was always had an interest in spirituality, and there's got to be something more to just, this body. And sort of started, I kind of stumbled across the Celestine prophecies many years ago, and then used to listen to cassettes. That's how long ago it was back in the day, cassettes of Deepak Chopra. And I kind of tinkered with spirituality over the years, but it wasn't until I lost a job in the mid 2005 rather, that I kind of slumped into depression, that things started to open up for me, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms, but that's when things started to unfold intuitively, spiritually, but really in terms of the hardcore moving forward with the writing and the soul connection and the soul purpose readings, where it was probably sort of 3 or 4 years ago. So I've been kind of actively working on it for 3 or 4 years with that vision of soul reconnection in mind.
Wow. And that was, what year did you say did you lose your job?
2005. So 2005. It's been a journey.
Oh, believe me, journeys, I'm with you. They take a long time, but I think in essence, it hasn't been that long, really, even though it feels like it. And you're on the cusp of this precipice of this great sharing. I love that I found you on Spirituality and Health Community.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and it was meant to happen. I think there was sort of kindred spirits find one another without too much trouble.
It was so that, because I thought, for us to really do what we've come to do, everyone connects to different people. And so the people that are doing the work, I thought we need to connect more. And come together. So I just got spirituals. So we raise our vibrations, right? And then the people around us can come up and then find people to work with and raise up. And I thought, I've got to figure out a way to do this. And I'm just going to start, if I feel a connection, conversation with people. Because I realized for me, I was still doing a lot of output, right? And I output to you, and bam, it just went.
I know, it's wonderful. And I think, I don't know how you feel about this, but certainly in the UK, we don't have a lot of opportunities like Pyramid One Network, like Conscious Speaks Radio, to talk about spirituality and soul and that kind of thing. There's a few, but there's not a lot of shows or opportunities to share that. And I know you can do things on sort of social media, and you can create your own platforms in social media, but I think I'm probably a little old school, being like you, a radio presenter back in the day, and I love the medium of radio, whether it's online or through a wireless, as my grandfather used to say. So I like the kind of personal connection of that, and it just seems to be, it's a wonderful opportunity to get the chance to to chat to you, because I will learn from you as well.
Yes, we both will, and we'll stay connected. And you said something that made me think about, your past radio experience. You interviewed Madonna, right?
I did, yes.
That one blew my mind, because I thought, oh, that's so super cool. I'm 49. I don't know how old you are, and you don't have to say, but I mean, Madonna was right there for me.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. And I'm 45, nearly 46.
Okay, so we're right there.
Same age, yeah. So, yeah, I used to do sort of commercial radio, so it was music and talk radio, and it was always the breakfast show. So I kind of worked on breakfast show for a number of years, and because I love people, I love talking to people, I love chatting with people, and that obviously came across, in terms of the various interviews. So I was very lucky to get the opportunity to interview her in London at the Dorchester Hotel. Yeah, so it was a really interesting experience.
Do more radio? Oh, wait a minute. I just skipped over something almost. You said it was a very interesting experience. Can you share?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so she was there to do, it was a day of interviews for, I can't even remember what the project was now, and I think it was just after she got married. Up at the Scottish Castle, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it'll come back to me. And everybody had been given, an 8-minute slot for interview, and everything was running late, and I'd been there the whole day. And then her manager came in and said, "We're running late, you've got 6 minutes." So you need to go in. And I thought, oh God, I've been here all day. She's been doing this all day. And it was started off with, television and then worked down to radio. And by the time it got to our station, who, weren't national, it was kind of the end of the day. And I thought, how am I going to make this interesting for her? So I don't know if any of your listeners will have ever seen these tartan hats that the Scots sometimes wear with fake red hair coming out the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And I had thought, well, how am I going to stand out? I'm going to bring this hat. She likes hats. And I had a wee button that you pressed on it that played some hideous Scottish bagpipe tune. So I literally sat down and said, well, you must be so bored. I brought this hat for you. And she actually put the hat on and played it, which kind of broke the ice. So she was lovely. She was very professional. It was a great experience. I was very lucky to meet her.
Well, it sounds like you are very lovely and very professional with her and were able to create that moment. Did you feel, were you in your spiritual work then? Was that before 2005?
I think what had happened with me, I found that when I was communicating, because for me it's all about communication, whether it's communication with your inner self, source, spirit, it's all about communication. And I felt that I had this creative outlet when I was on the radio. So for a number of years, I didn't actively pursue anything, because at the time I think I was so busy focused on that aspect of my time here that it wasn't something that I explored. And it wasn't until I lost that job that I kind of slumped into depression. And then a whole load of different strange experiences started to happen to me. I mean, I still had an interest in reading and learning, different practices, but I didn't actually think that this was anything that I was going to do, as a living or as part of a career. Let alone talk about it publicly. It was something that's taken me a number of years to, come to terms with, because I think, I don't know how you feel, but I'm, as well as being an intuitive and a psychic, I have mediumistic abilities, and that was something that took me a long time to kind of admit to, randomly. I don't know why, but I think there's a bit of an image. It doesn't have a good image, certainly over here, and I just didn't resonate with it. So, and it's confidence as well in your own abilities.
Which is all part of our growing journey, yes. Right? Well, I think that we create our life, and we create and pull others to us. And to have such a great medium of her in front of you and to have such a great experience only shows you as a mirror to you that you have that same ability, and you shine so bright right now. You talk about soul reconnection and remembering, and you do that with groups, or do you do it one-on-one? How does that worok?
Well, you can do it with both. So the sort of method I use are sort of, I don't know what to call it a method, but there's lots of different ways that you can assist people in reconnecting with their intuitive self. But I studied a process called Soul Plan, which is an ancient system of life purpose analysis and spiritual counselling, and it's been sort of channeled. It's ancient wisdom that was channeled recently and kind of updated by a chap called Blue Marsden, and I studied this at the Holistic College in London. And it's really a system. It's a sort of two-pronged attack. The first part is you take the birth name, so your name that you were given at birth, irrespective of whether you still use that now or not. It's always based on your birth name. And then there's a process that you go through to calculate through a sort of ancient form of numerology that creates a chart and assigns different energetic vibrations in the form of numbers and symbols to your name. And so it's based on the sound theory that every letter in your name creates an energetic intention, and you read. So part of the process of this is reading the energies within that intention, and there's a worldly aspect and a spiritual aspect, and in each aspect there's challenges, talents and goals. So when you're born into this life, you already have a spiritual blueprint, you know what you're here to do, but life and the sort of human ego aspect of us as beings gets in the way and knocks you off course, so you tend to forget. And a soul plan reading really helps you remember. So I'm not telling, when I give someone a reading, I'm not telling them anything they don't already know. They might not be aware of it up here, but I always find with readings that I have, at the end of it, people go, Of course, that's why that happened. That's why I had these lessons. So it's really just about realigning you back with who you are. So that's the soul plan readings. But I work with groups on a more loose, intuitive fashion, either through art, through painting workshops, because I believe any kind of form of creativity, whether that's dance, singing, anything that kind of frees and releases you, is a tool to help you get back in touch with your heart, your emotions, your feelings, your soul self. So from a group perspective, it tends to be more group work and more creative led. One-to-one is the soul plan because it's very much based on an individual's birth chart.
Do you, when you were talking about the chart and how you read it, did you say, did I hear it right, that you take the name and then you put it into a number frequency, or
Yes.
just a letter frequency?
Well, it's both. So what happens with the system, this particular system, is that it's based on the ancient Hebrew alphabet. So there's 22 letters in that alphabet, and they ascribe the kind of the 26 letters that we have. And if, for example, you are from China or Japan and obviously use symbols instead of the Western letters, we would use the Western representation of that name, and you assign these letters. So, for example, th or sh, instead of having two letters, has one. So that's why there's only 22 letters in the alphabet. And each of these letters is assigned a number. And each number has a specific energetic vibration. So your chart would have a combination of 7 numbers. So it's a triangle, a downward facing triangle, an upward facing triangle, and then you've got the number in the center. And they're combinations of numbers. So you may find that you have a variety of numbers round your chart. So therefore your soul plan encompasses the energetic sort of challenges and positive aspects of each of these numbers. So for example, 8 is a very creative number, really good at communication, very in touch with their intuitive selves, which you probably have an 8 somewhere in your chart. And so the first part of a reading, you interpret these energies, but the reading also has an intuitive aspect. So a soul plan practitioner coach would tune in the same way. The easiest way to describe it is if you've had Reiki healing before. So a Reiki healer tends to be the kind of conduit for spiritual healing energy, and you connect intuitively to whatever you want to call it, source, God, etc., etc. I would connect in the same fashion, except I would connect to your soul energy. So your soul intuits through me where you're at, what's been happening with your life, and it can be really quite as specific. I did a reading for a girl, and the information came through, and I had this image of her ploughing or sowing seeds, so that the land had been ploughed, and I could see all the furrows on this sort of brown earth, and I saw her planting seeds with her grandfather. And I could, because sometimes you get images that are literal, and then other times they could be sort of representative of your, you're setting the groundwork for something new that's coming to you. So I always can say to her, this is either something literal, so you actually planted seeds with your grandfather, or it was literal. And she said, well, I used to plant, my grandfather had an allotment, and every weekend we'd go and plant different seeds for something. So it can be really quite a specific reading, and I find that these kind of visual guidances and visual reference help people to either take them back to a time that they need to revisit, where there's a learning or a teaching, or I think it also helps with the trust issue. When you're doing a reading, if you can go back to some time in somebody's life and give them some kind of evidence of a knowing or a sense of who they were or where they were at, and it can be very accurate. And the more open you as an individual you are to this kind of process, the clearer the information comes through. Because if you work intuitively, know yourself, if somebody can be guarded and blocked, it can be very difficult to connect with their energy and therefore read and intuit what they're feeling.
Right. You had me at Hebrew because I understand the frequency of that and how the letters work vibrationally. So that was like, okay. And then when you were talking about the girl and planting the seeds with her father, I got spiritual chills all the way through my arm. So I'm like, yeah, I think I might need to do one of these readings. Have you had one?
Excuse me?
I was wondering if Vicky's had hers done.
Yes, and that was the reason that I learned to do this, because I was exploring a number of different paths in terms of what I was going to do with these sort of intuitive abilities, and I did an amazing workshop with James Van Praagh, who's a medium, an American medium, and he had such great energy, and I loved what he was doing, but the sort of where you go with that as a career, certainly in the UK, tends to be quite specific, that you would do one-to-one readings and connect people with loved ones who passed over, either on a one-to-one basis, or you do sort of platform demonstrations, and that it was just not something I was kind of resonating with at the time. And it was my mum had introduced me to a woman that she used to go and get Reiki with, and this woman had been telling my mum about this soul plan reading. So my mum said, why don't you go and get one and see what you think? And I was blown away with it. It was just so accurate, and it was like a penny dropped. And I went, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. I found the course and I booked up for the next course and took the course.
I love it. I love it. I keep getting spiritual chills too, which is always confirmation, right? You're like, oh, I'm all the way up my neck and my spine. Bob, did you say something? I heard you there for a minute.
No, I thought you guys direct something at me, because there's some questions coming, but I'll leave them till later.
Oh, do we have a question? I'd love
Later.
to give.
One of them
Vicky.
was crazy, and I wrote back in that already. And they wanted to know, Vicky, have you
Yes.
ever done an animal?
In terms of soul plan, no, but I have done healing, sort of spiritual healing on an animal. And I have a dog myself, a little Cocker Spaniel called Lucy, and I practice on her. So in terms of sort of intuiting, sorry?
The poor dog.
I was thinking lucky dog.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of working on chakras, so I've worked with dogs from a healing perspective. I was invited to go and do some work at a cat and dog home to see if I could sort of help some of the more challenged dogs that had been in kennels for a long time. And I found it quite difficult because you can't work with them on a one-to-one basis. And I think with this kind of work, whether it's with a human or an animal, you have to have that sort of space where either the human being or the animal can feel comfortable, because to sort of open up, you have to be in a place that relaxes. And in the kennel, it was very difficult because they were obviously, for my own safety, kept behind a cage and behind a bar, but they were still in with all the other dogs, so it was just carnage. But I worked. Sorry?
Oh, I just laughed when you said it was carnage.
Yeah. But my dad's dog had some issues with her leg. And I did a healing on her, and I'm going to take full credit for her, but it seemed to do something with her leg, and she didn't need her pills anymore. So, but yeah, but I know that there's people that communicate with animals and can actually have full-on conversations with animals, and I've tried it. Because you can sort of, in your head, because dogs respond energetically to visual images as well. So I was kind of had this conversation with a really amazing woman, and I haven't actually met her, but it was on online. We were kind of chatting, and she said you can practice by sitting upstairs and having your pet downstairs, and then just kind of relaxing and get into the zone and visualizing your dog coming upstairs. But you have to have the whole image of the dog coming up the stairs and you cuddling at the dog at the top of the stairs and you sharing that moment. You really have to immerse yourself in it. And I've tried it, but I've not had a huge success with it.
That's interesting because I tried that when I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, but one of my cats has his front arm amputated. And so my co-host on my old radio show, Jackie, told me the same thing you said, that the animals are visual. You can show them things through pictures. So I would sit there and show him how strong he still was, and that, missing a leg was not that, and I was like, well, hopefully it works. And I think it did. But I mean, there's probably people out there that can work, highly with humans and animals. I know for me, I work with humans, and so it sounds like that's your forte too.
Yeah, I think, you explore, and certainly you'll probably be the same, when you kind of first recognize there's something more you need to do, you need to stay, and it is a need. It's not, every time you try and squish it, it comes back and bites you in the bum again, until you kind of eventually say, right, let's do this. And certainly for me, I explored a number of different paths, until I kind of fell, and I didn't fall, I was meant to find out what it was, and I think this is just part of it, and like you say, there's people who are tremendously gifted at different aspects of intuitive work, so you find your forte.
Yeah, find it and then hone it, and then maybe at that point we're able to open up further, as we talked about, and that makes me really think about the other part that I liked when I was looking at your page and your work, is that you were talking about cells and cellular memory. It was I shared a video today when you were talking about Mother Nature and how we just need to get outside, and I loved how you took it from, if you can come up to the top of this beautiful mountain where I am, good, but if not, you were all the way down to go buy a plant, do something to
yeah,
and
absolutely.
tell us about how that works for you with cellular, our home, our cells.
Well, I mean, I feel, because for me, my beliefs are we are all connected. Everything is just energetically connected, and there's so much inspiration I find personally in Mother Nature, in plants, in animals, in bees, in leaves. I just find the whole process of how it's come about amazing, and for me, I have to have plants round about me. I have to, we've got a garden, although we live in the city centre, we have a balcony, but I've filled it full of plants, and for me it's really about being aware of the energies and the frequencies of plants, and it's about getting into Mother Nature and just immersing yourself in it, and sometimes that can be a conscious process, where I will go and sort of stand and take my shoes off and put my feet onto the ground so that I feel the ground beneath my feet. But oftentimes it's not that. It's skiing. I'm a real keen skier, and it's just being in mountains, hurtling down a mountain on snow and just experiencing Mother Nature in all its process. Because for me, it still has an innocence about it that hasn't been tainted by society and the way humans have interacted with it. I know there's another debate there about the fact of what we're doing with the planet, but if you take that debate aside and just go into a garden, go into a park, and just immerse yourself in it, consciously or unconsciously, I just I think if you can open up to the possibilities of energy and Mother Earth as the source giver, then that in itself makes you feel better. They say that you go out into the park, go and stand or sit on a park bench for 5 minutes, and you start to kind of feel better and let the stresses and strains of the day disappear. But from a cellular level, it's more, that's a kind of unconscious thing for me. And I paint, and a lot of my work's inspired by plants and Mother Nature, but it's not something I'm consciously aware of. I just connect intuitively, and the only way I can describe it, it just is.
Yeah, I liked what you said, life is innocence, right? It really is when we take away people, the dogma, when we take away pain, when we take away assigning a feeling and just look at the pure essence of life, how it all comes to form. The more work that you do, the more you can hold a plant or a leaf and go, "Wow, I can't believe this happened!" Right? So, if people out there listening haven't reached that part where they're always like, "What is this thing?" Bob had wrote something about tree huggers. There are people out there that don't understand the real love of nature, and it's not. I think it's not because we don't want to, but it's the not remembering part that you talked about.
Absolutely, and the other thing is, I think because we're so used to very obvious signs, life is very obvious now. We have lost our ability to feel more subtleties. And there was a post I did on my Instagram account that I randomly came across that it's scientifically proven that people who receive flowers or have flowers in their home are happier. And that's flowers. So if you find it a bit too tree hugging, a bit too left or right, whichever way you swing, to just sort of embrace the fact that plants are energy and they're life-giving, all you have to do is look at a flower. Find a flower that you like the look of, and just appreciate the beauty of that flower. Just look at the flower and appreciate the colors, the shape, the pattern, the texture, the layers. And that's a starting point. The minute you start to appreciate, that's when you start to tap into that energy.
To that innocence, right? Mm-hmm. That beauty. I'm glad that you brought up the flowers, because I saw that on one of your posts about the love of flowers and having them around. And I thought, oh, I get it. I mean, when I can, I always have fresh flowers in the house. Mm-hmm. When I can't, I know that they're missing. I miss them. I have my plants. I have a flowering cactus, so I'm always talking to her. I'm like, more flowers, please. But there's something about that vibrant life. People will sometimes say, oh, you shouldn't, clip a flower because then you're killing it. But I'm a person that believes in the circle in life, and that it's all part of honoring the beauty. We all born, we all will one day die. The flowers bloomed, and I think that having the flower in the house is a part of that circle. When I'm chopping wood, I know that tree was cut down, and then I honor and talk to it and say thank you for all the air that you cleaned, and thank you for everything you did during your life journey, and whoever cut you down, I hope that they told you that you were beautiful, right? I mean, we can get pretty in there when we're really connected.
Yeah. And I love you, log.
I know. I hope they told you were awesome, and I feel that way you do that with your flowers. So I thought that was a cool connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a plant in our old house in Scotland that we moved 4 different places for a whole load of reasons. I'll not go into the details in the garden. And this thing was hanging in there. I mean, honestly, you would have thought that this poor, it was a flaming a forest flame. And when we left, we thought, right, we're going to take some cuttings, because it had this kind of sentimental value to us, and we took 19 cuttings from this plant, and I'm not a horticulturist. I don't know what I'm doing. I just thought, well, we'll just cut it here and we'll cut it there, stuck it into wee petri dishes and carted it, several hundred miles down to London, and it was stuck in this sort of not a petri dish, a kind of test tube for months and months, and this thing was not rooting, and we were like, how is this not rooting? And then it started to get all kind of green and moldy. And I thought, right, that's it. Everything else has died. We've got 2 left. I'm going to stick them into a pot and pray that these things grow. And honest to God, within 2 weeks, they were double the size.
Oh, yay!
And that whole nurturing, that was the process of, you said earlier on, don't take cuttings and don't cut flowers, but that is part of the cycle of life. We cut that. And carted it down here and nurtured it and fed it and watered it and looked after it and gave it sunlight, and it managed to take root, and we've now created 2 new lives out of this tree, so.
And I heard in there something really cool, because you mentioned nurturing. You got to nurture it. You got to mother it, right? We get to help birth that whole process. And that's really cool. That's a really cool.
Yeah, and we don't have family. We tried, but unfortunately I wasn't able, and we suffered a number of miscarriages. So I tend to kind of throw that mothering out onto anything and anyone that will let me. So the dog is the fur baby. The plants are my green babies. And I think it's part of my personality, to kind of help and nurture and mother. And I hope not being too smothery, but it's just... It's part and parcel of it. I think in terms of, if you are sort of a healer and somebody that wants to support and assist, and, there's different names for it, whether they're light workers or, light warriors, whatever you want to call yourselves. I think anybody that wants to be of service, because ultimately that is what it is. You are being of service by helping other people grow, and develop and become who they were meant to be. And ultimately, I suppose that's what mothering is. Mother Nature is that. You know, that's what mother does. She gives birth to you. She's part of that creative process. And, you know, as joint parents, obviously, mother and father bringing you up. So, yeah, I think it's intrinsic to anybody who does sort of intuitive work of service.
I think so too. You know, remembering is just like rebirth, right? We have the resurrection, however we want to term it, deveiling, when we grow a new us per se. You know, we need those helping hands. And that's why, you know, I always talk about how isolation is a lock, it's not a key. Like, don't be afraid. If you're listening to this radio show and you're like, wow, I really think Vicky, you're getting spiritual chills, you want to maybe do a soul reconnection with her, how would anybody reach out to you to book an appointment?
Well, they can go to my website, which has got all the information about everything that I do. So it's just very simple, vickypaul.com, VICKYPAUL.com, and there's contact forms in there, and it goes into more detail about the soul plan readings and what that involves. And I've done readings for people in America, all over the UK. So doing something like this and a reading via Skype is every bit as powerful as a face-to-face, because as you know, when you connect intuitively, there's no such thing as time, space. The energy is there if the intent is there. So I would do it over Skype or FaceTime. I've done phone calls because sometimes people don't have Skype or FaceTime, so you can do it over a phone call.
Oh, wonderful. I've spent the last 6 years in my, you know, I hit my point for my spiritual journey. It wasn't losing a job. It was another failed relationship. And that was the thing that really was like, you know what, let's figure this out. And then I downloaded the book that walked my mind out of darkness, all that good stuff. But 6 years of intense work. And now I'm reaching out and wanting to connect and work with others. And I'm self-actualized. So the books that I read were ancient. It wasn't anything new that I was, and I hadn't worked with anyone. So I would love to have you do one of those for me. We'll have to make an appointment, and then I can talk about it.
Absolutely, I love to do it. And you know, when you say you're kind of self-actualized and you didn't work with anyone, I think there's you know, it works for some people to work in groups and to be part of groups and to use the energy of that group. But for me, you know, I struggled to find groups that I resonated with. And I was very lucky. I bumped into a woman on Facebook, similar to the same way I bumped into you, who kind of said to me, Vicky, you actually don't. You know everything you need to know. You just have to have confidence to trust, and it will be the same with you. You know, you've something's happened to you that's been significant enough for you to take stock and think, actually, there's got to be more to my life. And then as that unfolded, you've kind of connected with your gifts and what you're here to do, because ultimately we all have gifts, we all have talents, we're all here to do something individual and collective. You know, and it's about recognizing that, and in doing that, it doesn't mean to say that you have to give up all the things that you love, like your fabulous house and earning money and that kind of thing. I think there's a big thing with the fact that if you do spiritual work, you know, people struggle to charge for it, or, you know, to put a monetary value to that. But, you know, money is an exchange. It's an energetic exchange, you know, and if you believe in the law of abundance, then, you know, there's enough for everyone to go round, you know. So but that's, you know, a whole nother conversation.
It is. I love that. I call it love currency, right? And that's it. You know, we're creating a love currency contract, and that's how we keep that energy going and feel good about it. We should feel good about saying this is how much it costs, and feel good about going, oh, good, I get to pay that to you. It's this circle of responsibility and respect that we are creating, that when we give, we receive. And I, like you or a lot of people out there, there were times when I didn't know how to bridge that gap in my mind, but the books that I read, which that I love, it even tackled that. You know, it's your and I figured, oh, I'm charging for my time, not my spiritual gifts. And we're going to connect to those that we're meant to connect to, right? But we all have a lot of research we've done in our lives and in our past lives. And it's like a college, you know, we've got, you know, we brought it all through, and now we need to create a life where we can't share it. And
absolutely.
So we can't support ourselves if we don't charge for our work. And I love how you said that there's enough to go around, because there is.
Mm-hmm.
We can create anything we want in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of it. Flow, energy, and I think that all comes down to cells. I think it comes down to remembering and connecting like we did. I think that I feel your energy, and you're so beautiful. I see you and your smile, and I'm just so excited for your work. And
Thank you.
I'll love to keep promoting you too. Bob, I wanted to ask, do we have any more questions for Vicky?
No, actually, I've been talking to Timmy.
Oh, okay. Tell
Yeah,
him I said hi.
Timmy says, and I quote, he said, "Bob, the show is so clear today. Great job."
Oh,
Aw.
good. We had some weather problems last weekend, I think, everywhere. Well, everybody knows the weather's changing. We talked about that. And, life is changing. I wanted to tell you a little bit. Vicky's story says, she says she's always a free spirit. I grew up in Scotland listening to music, drawing, singing, dancing, and acting. Creativity has always been my way of exploring and expressing myself. I believe in the transformative power of our imagination and the healing power of our communications. And you just signed a book deal. Tell us about that.
I did, yes, goodness. I know. I still have to kind of pinch myself. So this was an idea that I kind of came up with on a car journey between Glasgow and Edinburgh about 5 years ago. And originally it was going to be a workshop. And I was driving and everything came, it was, to be honest, looking back now, it was like channeled information. But I forgot it all. When I got to Glasgow, I'd forgotten it all. And I started to take some notes. And then sort of life got in the way, and we had the miscarriages and had some difficult times for a few years. So I kind of shelved it. And then just thought, right, and originally I'd approached a publisher that I was keen to approach. And there's only a few publishers that accept unsolicited manuscripts from writers who are new that don't have agents, and they had a deadline for submissions. So I thought, right, I have to do this now, otherwise I'm going to miss it and it's going to be another year. So I just threw everything onto paper, and I wrote the synopsis for the entire book. So it's got 17 chapters, wrote the synopsis for each chapter, and then wrote the first 5 chapters, pulled together the proposal and sent it off. I never heard anything for nearly a year. And then they got back to me and said, great idea, but unfortunately you don't have a huge social media following, so it's not something we can take forward at this time. And then I had kind of shared this on social media, and a girl that I had met very briefly on a sort of intuitive workshop a couple of years ago, excuse me, I hit my computer there, had said, have you heard of the publishers That Guy's House? And I hadn't, and they were an indie spiritual publisher, which is perfect because it's a spiritual sort of book about soul reconnection. And I sent the manuscript off to them, and they come back and said, we love it. So, it took a few months to kind of back and forward. So yeah, I signed it about a month, 6 weeks ago. Wow. So I might have to get down to finishing it.
Congratulations. I know how I can imagine how that feels.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And, and it's, I suppose sometimes when you talk about these, you have conversations like this and stuff on social media, you're sharing the kind of the great aspects of all of this, and the kind of the not the end results, but some of the results of the work that's gone in. But that there has been a lot of challenging times that has brought me to this, and that's what the book is about. It's sort of part manuscript and part guidebook, and I use that in the two sense that it's a guidebook to help you understand what soul reconnection is and the process of that, but equally my guides are involved in communicating what needs to be communicating, because half the time I write, it's words that come out and I don't know where they come from. They're on the page before I know them. So I think there's definitely sort of I don't like the word higher power, because then that means there's a lower power, and I don't like that whole flip, but there's definitely communication coming from the universe, guidance wisdom from the universe. So I am, partly a vehicle for that to come through.
I agree.
I hope that I can do the whole process justice, and it is successful from the point of view that it reaches who it's meant to reach. And it can help people, because it can be a very lonely journey. Finding or reconnecting with yourself. It's not for everyone, is it an easy journey? It can be quite difficult, and I understand why people would be put off.
Yeah, exactly. I do too. I'm so glad that you're doing it. I was looking again at your work, and so if anybody out there's listening to you, if they're lonely, they feel confused or lost, how would you encourage them to come to do a session? Or if maybe someone out there literally is, you're feeling like you're connecting to them, to invite them to do a soul connection.
People come to you, when they are, if you're in a space, you will get to it when you're ready. It's not my job or your job to encourage people to do or to move on to a more spiritually connected path until they are ready. And people come to that at different times in their lives and for different reasons. And a lot of the time, and certainly having spoken with a great many people that I've met over the years, who are now kind of serving a spiritual path, things have had to get pretty bad for you to find it. You kind of hit rock bottom, sometimes more than once, for you to go, right, actually, I have had enough. There has to be something more to this. I can't go on anymore. So if you feel that your life isn't in a great position, and I was depressed for a long time, and had taken pills for anxiety, and was not in a great space for a number of years. And it wasn't until I had something quite random happen to me that I thought, right, I'm going to have to step up. So I think if you are listening to the show and you're feeling that there's definitely something more to life, you're not satisfied, you don't feel happy despite maybe having the kind of successes that society dictates that you have, you've got a good house, your kids are doing well at school, you can still sometimes feel lonely, lost, just disconnected from everything. Then for me, the kind of first process is to take a bit of time to sit with yourself and understand what that emotion is, and to actually just go there, to go into that emotion. So even if it's a scary emotion and it's an overwhelming emotion of sadness or fear, or you just want to burst into tears and you're scared to do that, is to try and find some kind of safe, sacred space to do that. My brother gave me a very good piece of advice many years ago. He said, Vicky, pour yourself a large glass of wine, pour a nice hot bath, and whichever comes first, you finish the glass or the water gets cold, that's when the wallowing stops. Then you have to take yourself out of that sort of self-wallowing and actually look at where you're at. What is making you feel like that? What can you do to improve your life situation? And sometimes these are hard questions that don't necessarily come, the answers don't necessarily come straight away. But if you trust that you have the answers and you ask the question, you have to frame the question right, because you can, the universe doesn't listen to the words, it listens to the intent. So if you're asking questions and you're not getting anywhere, I could put everything I own on it that the question isn't right. So you have to reframe the question. And I find Google is a huge source of support and help. And type in, I'm not happy, I can't deal with, I have feelings of fear, what does this mean? And you'll come across amazing information and blog posts that you might just resonate and connect with. And that's how I've come across a huge amount of people. I mean, that's how we met, on a community Facebook page. So it's about being honest with yourself that you're not satisfied and happy with your life, and then being brave. I mean, Brené Brown talks about vulnerability and courage being the same thing. It's having the vulnerability to step up and say, look, actually, I'm not okay. I'm not happy. I'm miserable. I'm crying myself to sleep every night. I feel lonely, even though I've got lots of friends and a great social life. It's having the confidence to admit that to yourself, first of all, and find a safe space to share that. And that may well be anonymously on a community page on Facebook, or it could be with a trusted friend, to just start that conversation. It's just the first step, so don't think of the end result. It's putting it right the way back to take the first baby step, which to me is admitting that you're not satisfied, that you want more.
Yeah, I agree. That baby step's the hardest sometimes. And it can be as simple as saying, it doesn't feel right. Is there something more? And just entertaining I like to say, if you could entertain the idea that you might not have the best answer right now, that's the moment that you might get that doorway. I totally agree with not asking the right questions. Sometimes you could feel like, when I did my first 90-day transformation, it was after I wrote my book. I used my book to do it, so that was funny to me in a good way. But every time before, when I'd ask these questions before I downloaded the book, I was transitioning. I would do a transition period of 3 months where I would just question and go over my relationships and what did I do wrong? How could I do it better? I never was a blamer. I had to look within. And I didn't know I was using the wrong word. That's why nothing was changing. I was transitioning from one thing to the next. And then someone comes along and asks me on my radio show to do a 90-day transformation. And I said, sure, what is it? And I had no clue that night. I'd go home and literally start really changing my life all over again. Once we're okay to change our life all over again, we really open up to dreaming bigger, don't you think? Letting go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing that we forget is every word that comes out of our mouth and every word that we think is a manifestation. So one of the first things, and I'm just, as you asked that question, I'm trying to think, what was one of the first things that I did, and that was recognizing the language that I was using to talk to myself, talk about myself, and talk about my life. So I would find myself to say, I'm miserable, I'm so unhappy, I don't love my life, I hate where I'm at, I don't like my job, I'm not happy in my relationship, and all of these were manifestations. So I just got more of the same. So I started to look at, language and the words that I use, and I started to change and just initially become aware of what I would say and how I would talk. Was really the first thing. And then I was aware of how negative I would be about myself and about my life. And that was probably one of the first things that I did, that I decided I was going to try to change the negative language that I was using and be more aware of reframing how I was feeling.
I agree. And that's a great first question that you asked yourself, because I also believe if we think it's happened on a higher level, we have to retrain our thoughts from the inside out. And just because we may not be speaking them doesn't mean we're not manifesting or creating it. And how we talk to ourselves matters. And I the longer I do this work, because I had to fight that negativity too, just like everyone else. We all have it. No one's immune. And yet it takes a lot of work to be immune. And even then, still, you have to practice every day. And we're going to have moments.
Of course. And, we're all, always learning. I still come up against, my kind of core fear go-to is security, financial security, and that crops up from time to time. And I still ask myself, what is this coming up for? I thought I'd put this to bed. So it is a constant work in progress. And that's the other thing, is that you have to ask yourself if you genuinely want to change, because a lot of people, there's safety and familiarity in a pattern of living and in a way of living, and change takes effort. It's not an easy process. It's absolutely worthwhile. And like you, my life is transformed, and it's not transformed in the respect that I've not, I don't have this massive house and I don't have huge income and I'm not driving the amazing car, but these are the things that society shows, society says to us, if you have all of this, then you are a successful person. Everybody's successes are very personal and individual to them. And that's part of the reason of what my book's about, is what is success, and what does success mean to you? Because we created that word in the 15th century, and it actually means to go near to. The outcome, a good or a bad outcome, is irrelevant. It's just about going near to. You know, we've kind of morphed and changed language as it does over time to mean something completely different. Yes. You know, so it's about recognizing, you know, success for me is being near to your soul. You know, it's being close to you, is to be back into who you are. And when you have that connection and you start to feel that connection, all the other stuff that really makes for an unhappy life becomes irrelevant.
Right, I agree. It has been so amazing to have you on the show today. Namaste.
Yeah,
everybody out there listening, this is Vicky Paul. She's in the UK in London. She's originally from Scotland, as you can tell. She has a book that's just coming out. When's your book going to be released?
I think probably likely now the beginning of 2020.
Just we'll have you back on the show.
Yeah, so I still want to finish it.
Well, now you have a deadline.
Yes.
Well, and also we'll have all the links to reach her on the show. So if you want to reach out and if you feel connected to do a soul connection memory session with her, we'll have all those links. And I just really honor you across the pond, as they say, for showing up today and spending time with us and everyone here.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I feel very blessed that you've given me the opportunity to chat to you and your listeners. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Namaste.
Namaste. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Bob, so much for putting the show together for us today. Thank you, Alan, down in Australia. We had a great guest on the show today. We're going to have more guests calling in. I'm reaching out and connecting to people all over the world so we can show and talent all the beautiful souls out there that are doing the work that are helping us change the frequency from fear to love. And have a good night, everybody.
Now, to both of you guys, I'd like to tell everybody, hey, you've been listening to Conscious Speaks Radio right here on Pyramid One Worldwide Radio Network. That was Kellie J. Wright. Let's hear it for her. Oh, yeah. Great show. God bless y'all. Bob Charles.